Welcome to Becoming Powerhouse, where we discuss the tough lessons I've learned while taking my two companies from negative revenue to over 7 figures. We'll talk about the raw and vulnerable truths about being boss, as well as tips and strategies you can implement immediately for better business results. I'm your host, Nicholle Overcamp, the founder and CEO of Wilcox Financial Group and Powerhouse Coaching. You can see links and other resources in our notes. Don't forget to head over to herhousemoney.com to grab your free Her Bundle for business and subscribe to our newsletter. Now, let's dive in to today's episode. The interview today is by a true financial badass, and she just happened to build this accidental $1 million company. Yolanda Brown is brilliant. And her experience, her story and journey, everything that she has gone through, accomplished, and where she is today is nothing short of inspiring, aspirational, empowering. I know you guys are going to love the chat. She is a fiscal and grants executive with a proven track record for managing process, procedures, and staff. She works a lot in the political space and also has a financial and accounting firm where she helps with budgeting, oversight, and monitoring for compliance with applicable city and federal regulators and laws. She has the proven ability to manage sensitive relationships with executive directors, managers, regulators, politicians, venture capitalists, and venture bankers. Wow. Talk about tough personalities to manage, and she does it like a boss. So tune in and enjoy the chat that I had with Yolanda. So, Yolanda, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you on. And for everybody listening, I met Yolanda through EO Entrepreneurs Organization. And during our first conversation, I was just like, I love this girl. We had a good vibe. You have a super dynamic presence, and the experience that you have as well is like really unique in the space that you play in. Of course, a fellow finance person, I have a special place in my heart for that. But, can you share just a little bit about your background and really how you got into your position and your founder's story?
Absolutely. I am the former Deputy Director of Finance within the District of Columbia. So I had an opportunity that was presented before me to become the CFO of the Florida Democratic Party. And it was through that experience that I realized that women in particular, as well as persons of color, were missing the bar in terms of compliance. And when I say compliance, there is reporting due at the federal, state, local, and county level for individuals that are running for office. And I noticed that minorities and women kept missing the bar. Errors, some resulting in criminal arrests, persecution, because the compliance, meaning the finance and the accounting, was not right. So I stepped down from my position as CFO, and I decided to start my own firm. In the beginning, it was very small. Just me and my husband started it up. And, one client turned into 110 clients within 6 months. So the word began to spread very quickly about the services that I provide. And that's how we ended up here today. I opened my firm, and now we're, much larger than we were before and represented in a number of different states. So it's been quite the ride.
That's amazing. And that's quick growth. And I think, if you don't mind, like unpack that a little bit, because you made it sound like this simple, smooth ride. Like, oh, I had one and they turned into this many. And
Yes.
I know it wasn't that beautiful. I mean, that's beautiful, but we both know that there was some like really painful points in the middle of that.
Absolutely.
So, number one, I'd love to hear what you ran into as far as resistance, frustration, challenges, like how you overcame that. But I'm sure everyone who just heard that is also curious as to like, okay, where's your unicorn and how did that happen? Like, what were some of the strategies that allowed that really quick growth?
Absolutely. I really had to rely on my financial background to get me through this. Opening a business is a very scary thing. And even as a financial professional myself, as an accountant, it is not something that I necessarily encourage people to do. And I'm saying that from experience.
Yeah.
When I left my job, I immediately panicked, like panicked in tears. How am I going to get the mortgage paid? How are we going to survive? How am I going to get clients? I didn't know anything about social media or marketing. I didn't know where I was going to get my capital from. So it was a very scary time. So I legitimately took the very last paycheck that I got from my full time job, and me and my husband got on the road.
Sometimes the best way to find what your like zone of genius is trial and error, right? Like, and a lot of times we fall into it, but it's because of the fire that we're willing to jump into that other people aren't willing to jump into. And just to back it up a little bit too, you mentioned you were lucky. I'd argue that a lot of women say, I'm lucky and this just happened. I'm going to push back on that and say, like, were you really lucky or were you busting your ass to put yourself in the right spot at the right time and then willing to do the work to get to that point of even getting the opportunity or to be asked to add on to that fundraising part, which now is where you.
Exactly. I'm just the person that moves the money. So I moved all the money for the entire state of Florida. And to be very frank with you, just like now with the presidential race, each state has its own, state office and CFO, and I was it for Florida. So in the spirit of transparency, no one cares who the person is who's moving the dollars as long as the dollars land. But the advantage
Mhm.
is I knew which candidate was where,
That's right.
who had what staff, because all of
Mhm.
that information needed to go through the party. So I knew where to go. I knew that the market was saturated in South Florida, and I knew that Central and North Florida were my best bets to find candidates. But again, I didn't know anything about social media. Now we have AI that's in the mix. I didn't know anything about this. So I kind of was my own
Yep.
calling,
Yep.
and I just hit the ground and start knocking on doors and showing up at
Mhm.
people's offices to get that business. But my name really became, widespread once I raised that $1 million. And again, I didn't even know how to do that. So, but I do know that people love a good story, and they love a good story that's true. I wanted to tell the story of the first Black mayor for St. Petersburg, Florida. So that's what I did to raise those dollars.
I love that. I love that. And storytelling does sell, right?
Absolutely.
What is that thing? Facts tell, stories sell, and people care about people and
Absolutely.
impact. They want to know the why behind it. And I mean, and look, like none of that was luck. Like that was you using your experience and your knowledge and being super gritty and scrappy and getting it done because you saw like this huge gap in the market. And you're here, and I know in our previous discussions, like you want to make a difference, you want to make an impact, you want things to be different than they are now, which is so true and indicative of like all of our clients. They're impact driven, right? And all the women on this show, we're more alike than we are different, right? And we're chasing that purpose, which I think is what makes the journey worth it, even though it's really, really hard. And so thank you for sharing that. But I just wanted to call you out on the lucky comment because that's a whole lot of bullshit.
Uh, You're completely right. I attribute it to luck, and I always have until just now.
Yeah.
Um, but it really was more than luck. It was, I needed to pay my bills, and I needed to
That's
figure out how to do that. And I had asked my spouse to make this big sacrifice to leave his job because I had this dream that I was going to make true. And, I was all about social justice and putting the right people in office and wanting to see more women and wanting to see more people of color. So, I felt a lot of pressure to make
right.
it happen. So I had to resolve, on that resolve that I didn't even know I had until I needed it.
Yep. And I love that about you. And that's another place where we're so much alike. It's like you knew there's a statistic that you don't like, so you put in the work to actually make the change instead of just talking about it, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what we need more of in this world. We need more. people, not just women, but more people standing behind the things they say they want to see change and then making that change happen.
Absolutely.
And I think so many people fall victim to being the victim and complaining without action. And so I love that you're doing that, because when you do that, you're giving now other women and women of color permission to do the same. And that's really powerful. And so that gets me super excited. And you have a supportive partner who quit their job and ran with you, which is a diamond in the rough. Let's be real.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. So what's that like?
It was a huge sacrifice, right? This is not a territory that I was familiar with, and then I'm asking my partner, who at this time we were not husband and wife, but we were engaged.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
you know, asking to put his 20 plus career on hold because I
Yeah.
have this idea. So, thank God he loves me enough.
There's a way to test it.
And just I feel like he was really proud of my work and
Yeah.
knew my work ethic. And if I to this day, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to execute. I'm not a dreamer. I am not, even with small things like going shopping. I don't go to the mall unless I'm buying. So I knew I could do it. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. So it was all
Yeah.
shotgun. I'm going to make it happen.
That's right. Go big or go home, right? You're not
Absolutely.
going home, at least empty-handed. So, and I think that's really cool that very few partners support at that capacity.
Right.
And I love that you did that before you got married. Way to test out the waters, talk about making sure he's the right fit. But it's funny because I do this workshop called Level Up, and it's like the principles for success in building a business. And one of them is, if you are in a relationship, to have that clear upfront contract. I talk about all the time, because we see the heartbreaking side of one of those things not working out, is that partners will say, yeah, I'm supportive, I support you, until it impacts them, right? Until they have to do something extra, or they're affected, or it's uncomfortable. And so to have that ability to have a partner who really does support you in your dream and what you want to do is game changing, because for those women who aren't willing to have that difficult conversation and being super transparent about what it can look like you have to have that buy-in up front, so that you're not giving up one of those two things that you love. Because a lot of times it's the business. I mean, even when I met my husband, ironically, we got engaged in the same year I launched the business too. And I said, hey, I'm going for broke. Like, I'm doing this. I don't know if it's going to work out. I was 25. I was totally clueless. I'm like, I could be really poor, or this could be okay. Like, are you in or you out? And he was basically like, well, I guess I'll sell my truck and we're in. And so, but my ability to do that up front came from like a lot of lessons in the past, where I was in relationships where I wasn't willing to own what I wanted, and I made sacrifices for the other person, right? I was dulling the person I wanted to become in lieu of making someone else happy. And I think finally I was like, fuck that. Like, I'm doing what I want, and you can ride or die. Right. And so I just wanted to, I don't even know, there wasn't a point to that, but I just think it's really incredible that you found someone to do that with you, but wanted to make the point of just speaking to it, because I think so many women do make those sacrifices, or they kill themselves over trying to make everybody happy. And at the end of the day, it's like, no, you want to find the person to run with you and support you and push you, versus that resistance. Because owning a business is really hard, right? Like, marriage is really hard. And the last thing you want is like resistance with those two as you grow and thrive. And now you've hit over $1 million in revenue because you're part of EO, which also speaks to how much you've grown. What in building in the beginning stages and now hitting over that $1 million threshold, where a lot of times that's the inflection point where we start to say like, okay, what's next? I'm scaling, and usually need to think about a team and a lot of that, so you don't burn out. What changed for you? What has been the critical points that you've been able to implement to help get over that hump?
It's funny, you touched on a lot of things. It definitely did hurt our relationship because I became so like focused on the business and the people that I was working with that, it was hard for me to focus on the fact that I was about to become a new wife. And I put that in front of my relationship. So that was one downfall that I experienced. When I hit over $1 million, I didn't even realize when that happened. But when it did, I didn't know how to scale. I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, a Virgo, true to form. So in my head, I felt I was not doing it myself, then it would not get done correctly. So I failed there too because a lot of mistakes. And with this compliance reporting, it comes with heavy penalty. So it got to a point where, I probably could have bought another house, how much I paid in penalties because I was tired. I grew too big, too fast. Um, and at the end of the cycle, it was time for us to get married. So, I mean, I was literally still taking calls 15 minutes before I walked down the aisle. It was ridiculous. So I told myself, before we came into the next election cycle, that I needed to staff up, that I needed to let go of some of this. I'm not sure how to word it, but like me holding on to doing things because I realized I couldn't expand unless I let go.
Hmm.
So I had to find staff. I had to train staff. I had to buy equipment. I had to get software. And these were all things that I really didn't know how to do or what to do. And I feel like the type of business I does is specialized. So there was not another model for me to follow. I was creating the model. So I found people. I went to the local banks where I did business and opened up campaign accounts. And, I would make relationships, with the banking. I'm going to give a shout out to Bank of America in Coral Springs because I was there so much that they gave me a little office space.
Love it.
Got to know the workers, and, some of them were looking for part time jobs. Who is better to have in your financial compliance business than a banker? So,
Hmm.
I hired them. Some of them did so well with me that they ended up leaving their full time positions and coming with me. And then they referred me to other people. And then those women referred me to other people. And that's how I built my women gang of workers. Then it was a matter of office space. Well, COVID hit, so no more office space. I didn't need office space, although I had procured 2 offices by this time. So I said, okay, we're going to learn how to do this remotely, and I'm going to develop a training over Zoom. And that's what I did. So that's kind of how I scaled. And then I realized, okay, now I have free time on my hands because I have, people doing this work for me. Now I can go out and prospect other clients, which, like I said, I never really had to do because everything was sort of like word of mouth.
Yeah.
But girls got even better, even sharper with how they were doing the reports. And I just handled QA, QC, which I still do to this day. But it gave me some time to take on other clients and then expand to other states. Because I was just Florida based at this time. So then I was able to move to Massachusetts and Illinois, New York, before we even moved to New York. So that's kind of how I was able to scale and build this into something much bigger.
Go, man.
Yeah.
Right.
The letting
Uh,
go hardest for me.
it's so hard and relatable. I was the same way. Nobody can do it better than me, right? Even though actually everybody can do it better than me.
Right,
Like,
right, right.
and that was one of the best things that a mentor had told me is like, if you want to grow, you need to be confident enough to hire people smarter than you. And if you want to maintain the best business with integrity, like you have to do that, right? And that was one of the best things I could have done. And my whole team is smarter than me in all the areas of which I'm not, right? I think that's a superpower, is the self-awareness, right? And knowing where you're lacking, but then being able to, for me, and I don't know about you, Yolanda, like I also was the bootstrapper, didn't have a model to follow, didn't have a mentor, and I had to learn how to lead, not manage, but learn how to lead, learn how to like develop systems and processes. And fortunately, I found a really good integrator and operations person to help with that because I'm hot mess express. Like that operations, not my jam. Um, but it was this ability to say, okay, well, me not doing it is better than me doing it, even if they fail. Like, and having that acceptance that it's okay to fail and mess up and learn from it, that. And I'm not sure how much you struggled with that, but for me it was like, holy shit, like if I let this go, that means it's gonna get a little messy. But there's not another way to do it, and accepting that in the first place was like this hurdle. And then it, for me, and I don't know for you, like it just got so easy, and now it's like fun to delegate stuff. Like I like get it out of like get it off my plate. I know I'm not good at that. I know you're better at it, but it took, and I'm a slow learner. You're faster than me. It took me years to be able to say like, okay, you do this, right? I don't want to.
I still struggle with that to this day. The delegation, it's hard for me. I'm still not good at it because in my head, I still feel like, I'm the best. You know what I mean? I don't
Yep.
take the click notes route. I'm going to read everything. And,
Yeah.
for this business, one of the big challenges is every state has different regulations. So it
Yep.
was getting people to understand that I need you to read all of these regulations because the fines are so heavy, and penalties. Another, huge hurdle, and I still encounter this to this day, is at the end of the day, I am still a woman and I'm an accountant and I am not an attorney. And a lot of my competition out here, especially in Washington, they're men, they're white men. And they are attorneys, but they're like criminal justice attorneys or they are criminal attorneys. They're not campaign finance lawyers. So I was also competing against that. Accounting was not given the respect as maybe a lawyer is because people think, oh, well, if I'm dealing with the lawyer, I do something wrong and I'm in trouble, then it's not a problem. Wrong. If that lawyer is not a subject matter expert in campaign finance, you're still in trouble. Lawyers need lawyers. So that kind of pivoted my next step in this business. With having staff, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to keep hiring lawyers and I'm not going to compete with lawyers. I'm going to be one. And that's the decision that I made. And to bring that facet into the firm as well. And, kind of cutting out that middleman because I was undercharging for my services, but I was
Mhm.
underestimating my services because I wasn't a lawyer or, I didn't feel like I had been in the field long enough when in actuality, I've been an accountant for 19 years. I am enough. So it was realizing that I was enough even though I didn't have that legal credential, it's nothing for me to get the legal credential because I already have the CPA credential. So, that is my next
That's
challenge
right.
currently on the table, competing
Yeah,
with the
I
larger.
love that. And it's partly just owning your worth and knowing that like I don't need any kind of title. I'm better than you because I'm an expert, you're not. And it's hard. I mean, it's like this weird thing with attorneys, financial advisors, and accountants. Those three industries are full of middle-aged, older white men with egos who
Yes,
fail to admit they don't know everything. They will
right.
never admit and they're all generalists. They're experts at everything. And the challenge and what's so scary about that, and we run into this all the time too in our space, is that they don't specialize and they make a ton of mistakes. But because
Ton.
of their ego and they won't admit that it's not their area, that they take on the work anyways because they also don't want to say no to the business, that thing called greed. And so which is fascinating because they make themselves look like really big idiots in the end. And I just wish and there's nothing we can change about it. And so I've navigated that myself, and again trying to like overcome that resistance for like, oh, you're just a little girl, like you can't
Yeah.
um, you're not as smart as this, but like proving that. And again, it took a lot of confidence coaching and understanding that like, wait a minute, I actually know what I'm doing more. It took time. It really did. And now what I'm finding is if you want respect, it actually takes that from you. Like you're the start of that. You can't just get it from someone else. And so it's like I had to respect myself enough to then warrant that. And what I didn't realize subconsciously is I was like stepping back because I was so intimidated that I was playing to the expectation they set for me versus playing to the one I really was capable of and had for myself. right?
100%. That again, I still struggle that with that to this day. Even like right before I had to get on this call, like it's demanding that respect because I belong in the room, and
That's right.
always felt like I belonged in the room, and that is not the case. So, just being able to be an advocate for myself, we spoke earlier about, how it affects your relationship. And it's like, my husband, my partner, my soulmate for life, he knew my worth. And, I was constantly arguing with him about, well, oh, I'm going to charge less because I want to get more business. But he knew my worth and I didn't know it. So it became
Mhm.
a point of contention. So it's like now, I know my worth more. And, I try to demand that respect, in the
Mhm.
room, also with the dollar as well, because I wasn't.
That's right.
And I think I was getting taken advantage of a little bit because it's like, oh, she's the new, young girl. And I'm not young. I'm actually pretty old. But, people, I guess they just didn't, they didn't value what I brought to the table. So, things are different now. It's a new day.
That's right. That's right. And it's interesting you bring that up about your husband because and men think so differently. And when I started in the business as well, I would come home crying like, "Oh, I didn't get a fair split on this case or compensation," and I'd be so upset. And the first comment out of my husband's mouth was, "Well, did you speak up about it?" And I'd say, "Well, no, I was scared. What would I say? What would they think?" And I had all these reasons, and he was just so like blunt and matter of fact. And he's like, "Well, then stop crying about it." Like, if you're not going to speak up about it, stop crying about it or go back and ask for what you want. And there was no empathy from that man. It was literally, well, you're either going to stand behind what you say you're worth or you're not. And for me it was helpful to, number one, I think, have that. It was like cold support. It was the kind I needed, right? I didn't need somebody to coddle me. I needed someone to like call me out on my bullshit. And he has an uncanny way of doing that. Sometimes it's not what I need, but that's a different story.
My husband too. He's an expert at it.
Okay, good. So yeah, let's not let them hang out. Um, but no, it was great because it was that man's perspective, ironically, was the support I needed to get ahead, to be able to think like him, right? And to say like, well, actually, yeah, why am I complaining about something I have the ability to change? That's crap. Like that is absolute shit. And it's also what I tell other women not to do. So then what really made me take that leap of faith, it was like I was out of integrity between what I was advising other women to do and being their advocate, but I was failing to be my own best advocate. And that's really what helped me anyway. And even if that helps you now, and of course it's always that struggle. I think we all have it, just morphs a little bit. But imposter syndrome's good too, because it means you're constantly playing in bigger, better rooms, right? As long as you're growing and evolving.
You're absolutely right. It's a constant struggle for me. There to this day, sometimes I wonder if I should, if I can really do this still, even though I'm doing it, but I do struggle with that. Or if I should just go back to a 9 to 5 because entrepreneurship is really, really difficult and it affects so many aspects of your life. And, that's why I really loved your book actually, because it made me think about things that have been on my mind. Like I'm not 20 anymore. I'm definitely 20 more than that. So, retirement, you know, even,
Yeah.
our new home, like, the way I purchase a house because I'm
Mhm.
self-employed is different than if I have W-2 and,
Yeah.
employment. So, everything is just, that much harder and that much of a struggle. So, even though, I do pretty well, it's still a challenge of, can I do this? That's it's awkward for me because I counsel other people on how to run their businesses, but then I'm always like on the fence about my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So always
It's
that
funny
doubt.
how that works. Yeah. Yeah. And it's different when it's yourself too. And I tell that to clients all the time. It's like, we give ourselves so much shame, but when it's you, it's different. And that's the value of other advisors, coaches, mentors, what have you, because it's so easy to give other people advice. But how often do we look inside and say, well, wait a minute, I need to do this, or I need to have this conversation or take action on it, because we always put ourselves last, right? It's
Absolutely.
easy to be the shoemaker, and often it helps to have that unbiased opinion to say, like, wait a minute, prioritize yourself, because you matter a lot.
Absolutely.
And to start putting action behind that, because it helps everything too. Like, if you take care of you and you prioritize yourself, it gives you more confidence to actually, I think, grow more and help your clients better. And shoot, I've made so many financial mistakes as a financial advisor. But I learned, and now it's easier for me to teach others, because I went through that, and I felt that pain. And you're doing the same. And sometimes I think it's so nice to just be human and humble and vulnerable and say, like, yeah, I've been there, done that. Don't make my mistake,
Right. Right.
and being a business owner is like no joke. Like,
No
it is
joke.
really, really hard.
Not,
I mean, I will come home. What?
it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. No, it's like, wow, am I nuts? Yes, we are all nuts. But it is, it's rewarding. At least for me, I'm not employable. There's, like, I would be fired, and I will hunt you down if you ever think about quitting and going back to 9 to 5, because you're crushing it. Um, Regardless of what you are telling yourself over there. So I just love watching what you're doing. So, in closing, and I could talk to you all day, but what is a message that you have for other female founders that you would love to share with them, who are maybe in that journey too, where they're feeling like, this is hard, do I want to keep going?
Don't give up. Don't give up on your dream, no matter how hard it may seem. Don't give up. And don't always listen to that voice in your head that says give up, because I have to fight that voice every day, regardless of the success. Don't give up. One thing that I did learn in EO South Florida that I carry with me daily is to remember why I started this. What I wanted to do. I wanted to help women. I wanted to help persons of color. And if I keep that in the front of my mind every day, it's worth pushing for. I can't change the world, but I can change the space that I'm in. And those changes lead to other changes, and those changes lead to other changes. So I would say, don't give up, and remember why you started your journey.
I love that. I could not have thought of a better way to end this, or something more perfect to say. So thank you so much, Yolanda, for your time and sharing your incredible journey and story. And until next time, my powerhouses, continue to
Thank
be courageous. Thanks so much for listening to Becoming Powerhouse. You can find all of the links to our site and resources in the show notes. Let's connect on Instagram at Her House Money, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at powerhousemoney.com. Remember, I want to connect with you. I want to hear your thoughts and help you with all the challenges you're having. So engage, send me a DM. And of course, if you're loving this podcast, let us know and go ahead and hit the subscribe button and leave a review.